Okay, Dr. Sam Amadi, an associate professor of law and a RISE analyst, is equally the director of Abuja School of Social and Political Thought, is here to take a look at this development. Very warm welcome to Newsnight. Tell us, the latest development is that the president is heeded or, listening to the voice of the people and is asked that the levy be suspended. Very commendable?
Well, it's commendable that the president listened to the people, but again, the process is not proper. The president shouldn't be seen directing the central bank. The idea of the central bank reform globally, not just central bank, is to secure their independence, and that independence of judgment, assessment, so with regard to monetary policy. Don't forget that we are dealing with an act of National Assembly that authorizes the central bank to take decisions. So that decision should be taken by the central bank. Not that that decision is faulty, in my view, illegal, because the central bank exceeded its power in the act. The proper thing is for the central bank to rescind that decision. But the notion that, it's good that people say, listen to the people and say, look, suspend. But then it carries a regulatory risk that the president will be ordering the central bank. That defeats the whole idea of the central bank independence of decision making in terms of monetary policy. And again, this is squarely in the statutory mandate of the central bank as covered by the Act. Now, there are many things wrong with that, the law.
The Cyber Security Act.
Okay. For the first instance, it's illogical to the levy is not the normal transactional charge. See, when the bank charges, when the central bank act or central bank allows the bank to collect money from you in terms of charges, they relate to services they're offering you. Now, this is in the nature of a taxation. This is a tax policy. Government says, look, we need to build cyber infrastructure, including training graduates of cyber technology. Okay, this is a public, quote unquote, public good, not incidental to transaction in the bank. Now, so it's like government is imposing a tax, not a charge, because this is, if you look at the charges for remittance, charges for this, they go to the bank. The bank takes those charges as part of service contractual commitment between you and the bank. This is government tax, it's a tax policy. The other issue is that the Act itself says only for businesses that are specified. Now, the central bank directive is contrary to the express. Once you're exercising the delegated power, it has to be strictly in consonance with the express provision of the Act. The Act says specified business. The central bank directives, includes individuals and normal transaction. So that is illegal. That is unreasonable, and the court will nullify it.
And didn't they even say it? When they made the mistake, including individual in what's supposed to be an expansion of the government tax net, to garner more money, what the cyber levy would have, given to the coffers of the NSA would have been over 40 trillion per annum.
That is the problem. You see, they probably presumed that the amendment they rushed out in 2024, this year, a few months ago, covered it. They didn't know that they left the same clause. So
same gap.
Maybe it's a textual error. They intended to create this money. And again, for me, in the article I'm putting for this law, I said this is theft. This is government using state power to steal from customers.
People.
Because there's no reason why that charge should exist. Because charges that banks charge their customers are actually for service. This is a tax for the purpose of doing something. It's just like government says, look, we want to put education levy, okay? It's not because you go to school. You have to pay, or companies pay education levy, not because they are going to school, but because government wants to tax them to achieve a development. And again, the question is, why should this be housed with the National Security Advisor? Look, cyber security is a technology, it's a science that maybe Minister of Science and Tech, the component of it that is related to NSA's office advisory, it has no bureaucratic capability to deal with accountability. It's not a project office. So you're going to warehouse so much trillion within an office to do deployment, purchase technologies, mount infrastructure, protect banks, build negotiate and contract out and build
Can
firewalls.
the banks protect themselves with the trillions of
exactly? Look at the profit they post
make
across the world, all over the world. These services are provided by the bank from what they make.
Yeah.
So there's no additional payment for you to secure. It's just like you are selling a product and you want people to put fire extinguisher for you, or the business continuity structures. That is your business. And so I think this is a very clever, illegal, contraption by government to take money from citizens. And that's very immoral. It's illegal. Again, as a taxation policy, it doesn't satisfy the conditions. So you can't use tax policy to create payments that are commercial and transactional based. So if I do transaction with my bank, and the bank says, we're going to charge you 0.5% to secure that that's not a public policy. That's not government. That's transactional. And so that is, in nomenclature, a wrong use of tax policy in the guise of a charge. There's nothing charged about it. This is taxation. One able to pay this tax, just like the VAT. So the VAT is government taking it. It doesn't belong to the provider. If you go to a hotel and eat, you pay service charge. That's a charge for services. Yeah. But they have obligation under government to collect for government a consumption tax. So in this case, this is not a charge that the bank is charging the customer. This is bank collecting a tax that government wants to take. For government. So in that sense, what's the service provider? So I think that what should be done now is the central bank to remove, cancel the directives, and then the National Assembly. Why did they have to pass this kind of law?
Surreptitiously.
And pass a law. First and foremost, what's the capability of the NSA office to warehouse these trillions? Have they seen the dimension of projects that ought to be done? I mean, you don't just construct payment structure without looking at project infrastructure and cost. And that's not the office that should handle. The NSA office is advisory. Advisory is an office that intellectuals brainstorm and advise on common dangers. In fact, they should create this scenario and pass on to institutions, say, look, we need to build firewalls, we need to train more technologies. So the education curriculum, Ministry of Education and Technology, we now map out how do we incentivize our people to go to these various schools. Yeah. It's not for them to, in the access, they spend this money, only so get
the way they desire.
That's wrong.
Now let's quickly look at the legal issue that Sarah Budget and 136 Nigerians have brought up and the rest. The court will be, favorable to them in their disposition, with the president suspending even the act itself.
The suspension does not remove the course of action, which is a declaration that this is unlawful. But again, the interim injunction sought might be defeated if the central bank comes out tomorrow and say, either based on Mr. President's directive or based on their own understanding that this is not right, they have suspended, then the interim order will not avail. There's no more legal case for it. But the substantive issue remains. And I think that this is a classical
it should go back to the National Assembly.
No, but the case remains because the National Assembly is not bound to amend the law. So it's a meritorious case. But again, local standard, they have it. This affects everybody. So I think this is a case that will go to trial, and I think it's, in my view, it's open and closed. Unlawful directive for the central bank, exceeding its power. The act is clear on which we pay. Even if we argue about the reasonableness, the economics and the reasonableness as a policy of this, National Assembly can make a law that's silly. So it's still a law. But the area that the directive that the central bank issued will be declared as beyond its power, because the act is expressed that is for businesses that are named in the schedule. Anything more than that is not what the National Assembly enacted, and therefore the court will side, in my view, with setup and those issues. But the question then is, even if they win the case, this is a signal that we shouldn't have. The National Assembly should develop more rigor. I mean, this kind of laws require good social science analysis. I mean, what are these projects? Which agency is best? Anybody who looks at look at NSA office, but has no capacity to manage.
But let us look at the whole gamut of the act. You understand? Shouldn't these NGOs be challenging the entire act and say, look, throw it away, go and start afresh again, the National Assembly?
Well, the difficulty is that the act itself does not essentially violate the Constitution. I mean, the basis in which you can throw out an act of National Assembly is that its provisions violate the Constitution. I think is a fast shot. It's in line with it. They have the powers to make silly,
Laws.
good, bad laws. You can only question the implementation. So if the laws are within the powers of the National Assembly, the only argument I could make is that I don't think that the federal government has the power to levy tax on this kind of transaction, even across board. I mean, they have a power to tax for, it's clear. Their power to regulate finance and banking is clear. But what should they have a power to levy tax for transactions even in the state? For example, VAT is collected as a federal
revenue,
but there are some taxes that are state. So it's a question that's gray whether the federal government can levy a tax on transfers within its taxing power. I would think that it's a gray area the court may look at, but otherwise the act is constitutional, but the directive by the central bank is unlawful.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Sam Amadi, a RISE analyst, for coming to shed light on the cybersecurity levy, its suspension by Mr. President. Thank you.